Few forces on Earth rival the raw power of a volcano, and history proves how suddenly that power can change the world. From Mount Vesuvius's 1631 eruption, which awoke after centuries of silence to bury towns in ash and mudflows, to Mount Galunggung in 1822, where weeks of explosions drenched Java in deadly lahars, each step up this list reveals greater fury. Mount Khulud's 1919 blast turned a crater lake into boiling avalanches of mud, while Iceland's Loki fissures in 1783 poured out gases that poisoned Europe and dimmed the global sun. Mount Unzen in 1792 collapsed into the sea, sending a tsunami that erased entire coastlines. The danger grows with Nevado del Ruiz in 1985, whose small eruption melted ice into a mudflow that buried Armero. With Mount Pelée in 1902, where a firestorm of gas annihilated Saint-Pierre. And with Krakatoa in 1883, whose final detonation sent tsunamis and shockwaves around the planet. Still more haunting is Vesuvius of 79 CE, freezing Pompeii and Herculaneum in their final moments. And, at the summit of devastation, Mount Tambora in 1815, whose titanic explosion darkened skies worldwide and unleashed a year without a summer. From mud-choked villages to global climate chaos, these opening lines chart a single, staggering truth. Earth's greatest eruptions do not merely scar landscapes, they rewrite human history. Centuries after the famed AD 79 disaster, Vesuvius awoke again in December 1631, catching a new generation unprepared. A sudden explosion released towering ash columns, rivers of lava, and most lethal of all, massive mudflows known as lahars. Flowing like liquid concrete, these torrents swept down the volcano's slopes and into towns, crushing buildings and burying thousands. Roughly 3,500 people perished. Ash traveled hundreds of miles, falling as far away as Albania, a reminder that even local eruptions can have regional consequences. Naples, then a bustling Mediterranean hub, bore the brunt, and the eruption became a defining trauma for the city and for modern volcanology. A series of violent explosions from Mount Galunggung in West Java began in October 1822 and continued for weeks, releasing pyroclastic flows and heavy ashfall. The deadliest agent, however, was not fire, but water. Torrents of hot mud, lahars, formed when heavy rains mixed with ash and volcanic debris. These surges destroyed farmland and swept away villages, killing an estimated 4,000 people and displacing many thousands more. The eruption unfolded over time, creating prolonged fear and hardship as successive blasts ruined harvests and poisoned rivers. Galunggung remains a textbook case of how a moderate eruption can become a long-term humanitarian disaster. Indonesia's Mount Khulud is notorious for eruptions that mix water and fire. In 1919, a violent explosion blasted through the crater lake that filled Khulud's summit, instantly creating a colossal lahar. Witnesses described mud as hot as boiling soup, surging down valleys at terrifying speed. Whole villages vanished under meters of scalding sludge. Around 5,100 lives were lost. Afterward, engineers built drainage tunnels to lower future lake levels, a rare example of major civil engineering born directly from volcanic tragedy. Beginning in June 1783, a chain of volcanic fissures in southern Iceland, known as Loki, erupted almost continuously for 8 months. Unlike a single explosive blast, this was a relentless flood of lava and poisonous gases. Roughly 9,350 Icelanders, about a fifth of the island's population, died as sulfur dioxide and fluorine gas killed livestock and ruined crops, triggering a famine called the Mist Hardships. But the disaster didn't stop there. A sulfur haze spread across Europe, dimming sunlight, cooling the climate, and causing crop failures that historians link to food riots and even the political unrest that helped spark the French Revolution. Locke showed how a single eruption can ripple across continents and history itself. Japan's Mount Unzen produced a devastating chain reaction in May 1792. First, volcanic activity shook loose the mountain's eastern flank. That massive landslide plunged into Ariake Bay, displacing a huge volume of seawater and creating a towering tsunami. The waves obliterated coastal towns and surged far inland. Roughly 14,300 people died, most not from lava or ash, but from the secondary tsunami. It remains the deadliest volcanic-related disaster in Japanese history, and a classic example of how volcanoes can kill indirectly, setting off landslides and ocean waves, more destructive than the eruption itself. On the night of November 13, 1985, a relatively small explosion at Nevado del Ruiz in the Colombian Andes triggered one of the century's worst catastrophes. Heat from the eruption melted part of the mountain's ice cap, sending a lahar, a volcanic mudflow, racing down river valleys. Traveling at highway speeds, it buried the town of Armero beneath meters of sludge. About 23,000 people died within hours. What makes this tragedy especially bitter is that scientists had warned of the risk and urged evacuation. Their alarms were lost in bureaucratic delay and poor communication. Nevado del Ruiz proves that even modest eruptions can be devastating if warnings go unheeded. The Caribbean island of Martinique was a tropical paradise until May 8, 1902, when Mount Pelée unleashed one of history's most lethal pyroclastic flows. Superheated gas and ash raced down the mountain at hundreds of kilometers per hour, vaporizing the city of Saint-Pierre and killing virtually all 29,000 residents within minutes. Only a handful survived, most famously Ludger Silbaris, who was protected by the thick stone walls of a tiny prison cell. The Pelée eruption is a chilling reminder that when conditions align, a single, violent surge can wipe out a city almost instantly. In August 1883, the volcanic island of Krakatoa between Java and Sumatra exploded with a force that still staggers scientists. The final eruption ejected so much material that 2/3 of the island collapsed into the sea. The sudden displacement of water generated colossal tsunamis up to 30 meters 100 feet high. Over 36,000 people died, more than 90% of them drowned by these waves. The blast was heard 3,000 miles away, and the atmospheric shockwaves circled the planet multiple times, breaking barometers from Europe to North America. Global sunsets glowed red for months. Krakatoa's combination of explosive force and far-reaching climatic effects makes it one of the most influential eruptions in recorded history. Few eruptions are as famous as the one that buried Pompeii and Herculaneum in AD 79. Although casualty estimates vary, from around 3,300 to perhaps 16,000, its cultural and scientific impact is immense. Vesuvius's Plinian column collapsed repeatedly, sending pyroclastic surges that asphyxiated residents in seconds and preserved their final postures in ash. Excavations have given us unmatched glimpses of daily Roman life, forever frozen by the volcano's fury. It stands as both a human tragedy and a priceless archaeological time capsule, reminding the modern world that heavily populated Naples still lives in its shadow. At the top of the list, and in a class of its own, is Mount Tambora. In April 1815, this Indonesian volcano unleashed the largest eruption in recorded history, a volcanic explosivity index VEI 7 event. The mountain lost more than 4,000 feet of height as it ejected an estimated 10 to 12 cubic miles of ash and pumice. Immediate death tolls in Indonesia reached at least 71,000, but famine and disease pushed the real number far higher, with some modern estimates exceeding 90,000 or even 100,000. The atmospheric veil of ash dimmed sunlight worldwide, producing the infamous Year Without a Summer in 1816. Frosts in June and snow in July devastated crops across Europe and North America, causing food shortages and migration crises. Tambora didn't just destroy villages, it altered global climate and history. These 10 eruptions, stretching from ancient Rome to the modern Caribbean and Pacific, reveal patterns with urgent relevance today. First, the deadliest killers are often indirect. Lahars, tsunamis, famine, and climate disruption repeatedly eclipse deaths from lava itself. Second, scale is deceptive. Nevado del Ruiz proved that even a modest explosion can unleash catastrophic consequences when glaciers, rivers, or human settlements are in the way. Third, global reach is real. Laki cooled Europe. Krakatoa colored sunsets worldwide. Tambora changed global weather for a year and perhaps influenced historical events from crop failures to migrations.
The modern world is better equipped than past centuries. Volcanic observatories, satellite monitoring, and rapid communication can give life-saving warnings. Yet many megacities, Naples near Vesuvius, Mexico City near Popocatépetl, or Jakarta near multiple Indonesian volcanoes, remain at risk. And climate change may interact with volcanic effects in ways we are only beginning to understand. Volcanoes are Earth's pressure valves, essential to our planet's evolution. But when they erupt, they can erase towns in minutes and darken skies for years. From Tambora's global chill to Pelée's instant annihilation, these stories prove that the greatest eruptions are not just spectacular displays of fire and ash. They are forces that shape history itself.